The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, it became the moment Seren Vantrell's entire world shattered. She stood at the altar of the Grand Cathedral of Valdoria, dressed in silk and silver, her pulse racing with joy as she waited for the man she loved to speak her name. Alpha King Soren Drakevale, the most powerful wolf in the realm. The man who had courted her for 2 years, who had whispered promises against her lips, who had chosen her above every princess and noblewoman in the land. But when the priest asked him to confirm his bride, Soren's eyes passed over Seren as if she were a stranger, and he spoke her sister's name instead. Selene. One word, one name, and Seren's life ended in front of 1,000 witnesses. She ran that night, fled the kingdom with nothing but the clothes on her back and a broken heart. No one came after her. Why would they? The king had made his choice. What no one knew, what Seren herself didn't discover until weeks later, was that she carried his heirs, twin heartbeats growing inside her. The future of Valdoria, hidden in a forgotten village at the edge of the realm. For 5 years, she raised them alone. For 5 years, she convinced herself she would never return. For 5 years, she believed she was safe. She was wrong. Because the Alpha King had finally discovered the truth. And he was coming for what was his. The Grand Cathedral of Valdoria had never looked more beautiful. Thousands of candles floated in the air, suspended by ancient magic, their flames casting golden light across the vaulted ceilings. White roses cascaded from every pillar. The pews overflowed with nobility from every corner of the realm. And at the center of it all stood Seren Vantrell, her heart so full she thought it might burst. 2 years. 2 years of courtship, of stolen glances and whispered confessions. 2 years of falling so deeply in love with Soren Drakevale that she sometimes forgot to breathe when he looked at her. Today, she would become his queen. The music swelled as Soren appeared, magnificent in black and gold, his dark hair swept back from a face carved by the gods themselves. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of burnt amber that had always looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. He walked toward her, and Seren felt tears prick her eyes. This was real. Soren reached the altar and took his place beside her. The high priest began the sacred words. But something was wrong. Seren felt it in the way Soren held himself, rigid and distant. She saw it in his eyes when she gathered the courage to look at him. Those amber eyes that had once burned with warmth now stared at her with nothing. No recognition, no love, just emptiness. "Soren?" she whispered. He didn't respond. The priest reached the vows. "Do you, Soren Drakevale, Alpha King of Valdoria, take this woman to be your mate, your queen, your bonded for all eternity?" Silence stretched for 1 heartbeat. 2. Then Soren spoke, and the word destroyed everything. "No." Gasps erupted through the cathedral. Seren's blood turned to ice. "Your Majesty?" The priest's voice trembled. "The arrangement was... There's been a change." Soren's voice was flat, emotionless. He turned, but not toward her. His gaze swept past Seren entirely, landing on the front pew, where her sister sat. "Selene," he said, "I will marry Selene instead." The world stopped. Seren watched in frozen horror as her younger sister rose from the pew, her face pale with shock that looked almost genuine. "Your Majesty, I never..." Selene stammered. "Come." Soren extended his hand. "Take your place beside me." The cathedral erupted into chaos, but all Seren could see was Selene walking toward the altar. All she could feel was her heart cracking open. "Soren," her voice came out broken. "Look at me, please." He didn't. His amber eyes remained fixed on Selene as she took Seren's place, as if Seren didn't exist. "Remove her," Soren said to the guards. "She's disrupting the ceremony." Hands closed around Seren's arms. She was being dragged backward, and he wasn't even watching. The cathedral doors slammed shut behind her, and the last thing she heard was the priest beginning the vows again. For Selene. She ran. Through corridors and gardens she ran until her lungs burned. She collapsed in the royal stables, her silver wedding gown torn and muddied. And there, alone in the shadows, Seren Vantrell shattered. She didn't know how long she lay there. She only knew that when she finally stood, something inside her had changed, hardened. She would not stay. She would not watch her sister become his queen. She would disappear. Seren stole plain clothes and a traveling cloak, keeping her distinctive silver hair bound beneath the fabric. She slipped out the castle's back gate under cover of darkness. As she reached the edge of the Valdorian forest, her hand pressed unconsciously against her stomach. A strange warmth flickered there. She didn't know it yet. But she wasn't leaving alone. Seren walked for 3 days before she allowed herself to stop. She moved through the forest like a ghost, her silver hair always covered, another layer of disguise. Every step took her farther from Valdoria. Every mile was another barrier between herself and the man who had broken her. On the 4th morning, she reached a small village called Thornwick. It sat at the very edge of the realm, so far from the capital that news of the royal wedding likely wouldn't arrive for weeks. She found work at the local inn, scrubbing floors in exchange for a room barely larger than a closet. The innkeeper, a gruff woman named Betta, asked no questions. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Seren fell into a rhythm of work and exhaustion. Then the sickness started. At first she thought it was the food. But when the nausea persisted, when her courses didn't come, Seren knew. She locked herself in her tiny room that night. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her stomach, reaching inward with the faintest tendril of awareness, the shadow magic she had always been forbidden to use. 2 heartbeats? Not 1. 2. Seren's legs gave out beneath her. She slid down the wall, palm pressed to her stomach, as the truth crashed over her. She was pregnant with the Alpha King's children. Twins. The heirs of Valdoria, growing inside a woman he had publicly rejected. If anyone found out, the council would take them. They would rip her children from her arms and raise them in the palace, far from their shamed mother. No. The word rose fierce and absolute. She would raise these children herself. She would love them enough for 2 parents. And she would never return to Valdoria. "I'll protect you," she whispered. "Both of you. I swear it." The shadows in the corners shifted, responding to her vow. Her bound magic was stirring. The next morning, Seren asked Betta about more remote villages. "There's a place," Betta said quietly. 3 days past the Greyvale Mountains, village called Ashford. No one from the capital has ever heard of it. Seren left before sunrise, one hand on her stomach, the other clutching her small bag of coins. She didn't look back. And somewhere far behind her, in a castle of cold stone, the Alpha King woke from a dream he couldn't remember. A dream of silver hair and moonlit eyes. He told himself it was nothing. He was wrong. 5 years later, on a crisp autumn morning in Ashford, Seren woke to the sound of giggling. 2 small faces hovered inches from her own. 1 pair of amber eyes, bright with mischief. 1 pair of silver gray, sparkling with barely contained laughter. "She's awake," Emmerich announced with the authority of a boy who believed himself in charge of everything. "We've been waiting forever," Cosima added solemnly, though the gap-toothed smile ruined the effect. Seren groaned. "It's barely dawn." "You promised we could pick apples today." Emmerich tugged at her blanket. "You promised." She couldn't help the laugh that escaped her. She looked at her children, her chest swelling with overwhelming love. Emmerich was 5 now, tall for his age, with his father's dark hair and amber eyes. He had Soren's stubborn jaw, too, and the same commanding presence. Sometimes it unnerved her, how much he looked like the man who had broken her. But then Emmerich would flash his crooked grin, and she would remember he was his own person. Cosima was his opposite. Quiet where he was loud, thoughtful where he was impulsive, with silver blonde hair that Seren told curious villagers came from her late grandmother, and gray eyes that seemed to see more than any child should. Sometimes Seren caught her daughter staring at shadows with intense concentration, and she wondered if the shadowborn magic had passed to her. Just last week, Cosima had made the candle flames flicker without touching them. Small manifestations, easy to dismiss as coincidence, but Seren knew better. All right. She sat up. Breakfast first, then apples. The twins cheered and scrambled toward the kitchen. She had built a life here. The cottage with its thatched roof, the garden of herbs and vegetables, the reputation as a healer that brought villagers to her door. Something good. Something real. But she had never stopped running. Not really. Every stranger made her pulse spike. Every mention of the king sent ice down her spine. She had changed her appearance, kept her hair dark with herbal dyes, let people assume the children's father had died. No one knew. No one could ever know. The orchard belonged to old Marek, who let the village children pick from his trees. The twins raced ahead, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. She was watching Emmerich climb a branch when she noticed the stranger. He stood at the edge of the orchard, half hidden by an ancient oak. Tall, cloaked in gray. His face shadowed by a hood, but something about his posture made Serene's blood run cold. He was watching the children. Seren's hand moved to the blade concealed beneath her apron. The shadow magic stirred, pressing against its bindings. The stranger turned his head. Their eyes met. Then he was gone. "Mama?" Cosima had appeared beside her. "What's wrong? You smell scared." "Nothing, little moon, just thought I saw a deer." Cosima's gray eyes studied her. "That wasn't a deer." "No," Seren agreed quietly. "It wasn't." The next morning, she found hoofprints at the edge of her property. Fresh ones. Not from a villager's draft horse. These were the prints of a war horse, the kind ridden by royal guards. Seren stared at those prints and felt her careful world begin to crack. They had found her. Seren had 3 days to disappear again. But on the second night, Emmerich fell ill. It started as a fever. By morning, her son was burning, his body racked with tremors, his amber eyes glazed and unseeing. This was no ordinary sickness. She had seen this before, a magical affliction that struck wolf-blooded children when their abilities manifested. Without proper treatment, without rare medicines only available in major cities. Seren tried every remedy. Feverfew, cold compresses. She even reached for her shadow magic, but it slid uselessly against whatever burned through her son's blood. By the third morning, Emmerich stopped recognizing her. There was only one place that could save him. One city with medicines rare enough to cure a wolf blood awakening gone wrong. Valdoria. Let her son die to protect her secret. Or return to the kingdom that had destroyed her. It wasn't a choice at all. She hired a cart, wrapped Emmerich in blankets, and placed Cosima beside him. Then she urged the horses toward Valdoria. The journey took 4 days. 4 days of barely sleeping, watching her son slip further away. Cosima held her brother's hand and whispered stories to him, her voice never wavering. They reached the capital on a gray morning. Seren found the healer's quarter near the merchant district. The first 3 healers shook their heads. Too advanced. Beyond their skill. The 4th healer, an ancient woman with milky eyes, studied Emmerich carefully. Her clouded gaze suggested she saw more than most, and cared less about court politics than coin. "Wolf blood awakening," she said. "Royal bloodline, by the strength of it. Can you heal him? The medicine he needs exists only in the royal stores. Only the king can authorize its use. The palace. Soren." She would have to face him. Kneel before him. Beg. An hour later, she stood at the palace gates with Emmerich in her arms and Cosima pressed to her side. "State your business," a guard demanded. "My son is dying. He needs the wolf blood cure." "The royal stores aren't for common folk." "Please, he's just a child." Something flickered in the guard's expression. He looked at Emmerich, at the gray pallor of his skin. Then his gaze moved to the boy's face, and he went very still. "Wait here." Minutes passed. Cosima shivered. Emmerich's breathing grew fainter. Then the doors opened, and Seren's heart stopped. Because standing in the entrance was the Alpha King himself, Soren Drakevale. The man who had destroyed her. The man who didn't know he was looking at his own children. His amber gaze swept over the scene, the bedraggled woman, the small girl, the unconscious boy. Then he looked at Emmerich's face, and Soren watched the color drain from the Alpha King's face as recognition crashed over him. Soren Drakevale had not felt fear in 5 years, but staring at a face that could have been his own childhood reflection, fear wrapped around his throat. The boy. Dark hair. Strong jaw. Features he saw every time he looked in a mirror. His gaze snapped to the woman, and fear transformed into something that knocked the breath from his lungs. Soren. Her name left his mouth before he could stop it. A name that had haunted his dreams for 5 years. She looked different. Thinner. Harder. The softness burned away, replaced by sharp edges. But it was her, standing at his gates with a child who looked exactly like him. Your Majesty. Her voice was ice. My son needs the wolf blood cure. Your son. He looked at the boy again, then at the girl pressed against Serene's side. Silver blonde hair. Gray eyes watching him with uncanny perception. Twins. She had twins. His twins. 5 years. 5 years she had been gone. Raising his children. Alone. Bring them inside, now. Guards moved to obey, but Soren stepped back. I don't need your hospitality. I need the medicine. Give it to me, and I'll leave. Leave? Something dark rose in Soren's chest. His wolf, silent for so long, howled to life. You think I'm letting you leave with my children? They're not your children. You lost any claim to them the moment you chose my sister. The words struck like blades. Because she was right. He had done that. But he didn't remember. That was the horror he had lived with for 5 years. He remembered the wedding. He remembered standing at the altar. But everything after was fog and fragments. He had woken 3 days later, married to Celine with no memory of how. And Soren was gone. He had sent search parties for years, but somehow they always returned empty-handed. As if someone was controlling where they looked. The boy is dying. The small girl's voice cut through. She was looking up at him with silver eyes. You can fight later. Save my brother first. Soren stared at this tiny creature who had just commanded a king. She's right. He turned to his guards. Fetch the royal healer. Now. For a moment, Soren didn't move. Then the boy made a pained sound, and her resistance crumbled. Fine. But I'm not leaving his side. I wouldn't expect you to. They moved into the palace. Soren watched Soren lay the boy on the bed, brushing dark hair from his forehead with tenderness that made something ache in his chest. His name, Soren said quietly. What's his name? Emmerich. And the girl? Cosima. Beautiful names. Names she had chosen without him. The cure will take hours to work, the royal healer announced. The boy must remain here for at least a week. No. Soren was already shaking her head. Give me the medicine, we're not staying. Moving him could kill him. He stays, or he dies. Soren's hands clenched. There was no escape. You'll have private chambers? Soren said quietly. No one will disturb you. And what about you? Soren finally looked at him, fury burning in her eyes. Will you try to take them the moment my guard is down? I would never. Don't. The word cracked like a whip. Don't make promises. Not after you humiliated me and married my sister on our wedding day. Soren. His voice was raw. What happened that day? I don't remember it. I know how that sounds. But it's the truth. I've spent 5 years trying to understand. Convenient. You don't remember destroying my life. It's not an excuse. It's the truth. I don't care about your truth. She turned back to Emmerich. Save him, and then we're gone. Soren wanted to argue, but the boy was gray and still, and Soren was trembling with exhaustion. We'll talk, he said quietly. When he's better. Cosima stepped forward, small and solemn. You have sad eyes, she said simply. Like Mama. Like you lost something important. Then she walked to her mother's side, leaving the Alpha King gutted by the words of a 5-year-old. 3 days passed. Emmerich's fever broke on the second night. By the third morning, he was demanding food and asking why they were in such a big fancy house. Seren wept with relief when no one could see, but with her son's recovery came a new problem. Soren appeared at their door every few hours with food, toys, and questions disguised as conversation. He was trying. And despite her fury, she couldn't deny his efforts with the children were genuine. Emmerich was wary at first, but Soren brought him a carved wooden wolf, and by the third day, the boy was showing the king his collection of interesting rocks. Cosima was harder to win over. She watched Soren with those knowing eyes, never warming to his attempts. But Seren caught her daughter studying a book of fairy tales he had brought. It was torture, watching them inch toward connection when she knew they would have to leave. And then, there was the other problem. Soren Drakevale was still the most beautiful man she had ever seen. 5 years had sharpened him, carved away the last traces of youth. His dark hair was longer now. His amber eyes held depths they hadn't possessed before, shadows and weariness that looked almost like grief. Every time he looked at her, she felt it. That pull. The mate bond that had never fully formed because they had never marked each other. It was still there. Dormant, but alive. She hated it, hated him, hated the way her skin flushed when his hand accidentally brushed hers. On the 4th evening, after the children had fallen asleep, Seren slipped out onto the balcony. "You're still beautiful." His voice came from the shadows. Soren stepped into the moonlight from the adjoining suite. "Don't." She held up a hand. "Whatever you're about to say, don't. I needed to see you. To talk without the children present. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything." He stepped closer. 5 years of wondering where you were. 5 years of a marriage that feels like sleepwalking. And now you're here, and I have children, and I don't understand any of it. You chose Celine. That's what there is to understand. I didn't choose her. The words burst out raw and anguished. Something happened that day. Something was done to me. I sent search parties for years. Someone was controlling where they looked, making sure they never found you. Seren's chest tightened. Who would do that? I don't know. But I swear to you, I never wanted anyone but you. He moved closer. She could smell him now. Cedar and rain and something wild that made her wolf keen. "I'm not asking for sympathy," he continued. "I'm asking for a chance. To know my children. To prove the man at that altar wasn't me. Prove it how? Unbreak what you broke? I would if I could." His voice cracked. "God, Seren, I would give anything." The sincerity made something twist painfully in her chest. She didn't want to believe him. But looking at him now, seeing the hollowness in his face, her certainty wavered. "Stay away from me," she whispered. "I'll let you see the children. But you and I, there is no you and I. I can feel the bond between us. It never died. It never completed either." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "You saw to that." The words struck home. She watched him flinch. "I won't force anything," Soren said quietly. "But I'm not going to stop trying. You're my mate, the mother of my children. I lost you once. I won't lose you again." Before she could respond, he cupped her face in his hands. His touch was electric. 5 years of suppressed longing surged through her veins. "Tell me you feel nothing," Soren whispered. "Look me in the eyes and tell me there's nothing left, and I'll walk away." She opened her mouth to lie, but the words wouldn't come. Because standing in the moonlight, with his hands on her face, she couldn't pretend anymore. She still loved him, and that terrified her more than anything. "I can't do this," she breathed. "I can't." She pulled away and fled inside, pressing her back against the balcony doors. The bond was waking up, and some things, once stirred, could not be silenced again. A week became 2. Emmerich's recovery required continued monitoring, and Seren found herself trapped with no clear escape. But somewhere along the way, the cage began feeling less like a prison. It started with small things. Soren teaching Emmerich to hold a wooden sword. Cosima discovering the palace library. The children laughing in a way Seren hadn't heard since Ashford. They were happy here. And Soren was different from the cold king who had rejected her. This Soren was gentle with the children, endlessly patient. He never pushed, simply showed up, day after day, offering pieces of himself. One evening, he did something that shattered her defenses completely. Emmerich had been struggling with nightmares since his illness. Seren heard him crying and rushed to his room, only to find Soren already there, holding their son against his chest, humming a lullaby in a voice rough with emotion. "It's all right," Soren murmured. "I've got you. Nothing will hurt you while I'm here." He didn't know Seren was watching. This wasn't performance. This was a father comforting his child. She slipped away before he could see her tears. The next evening, she found him waiting on the balcony again. But this time, she didn't tell him to leave. "You're good with them," she said quietly. "Better than I expected. They're easy to love." He turned to face her. "Like their mother." "Soren, I know you're not ready to forgive me. I don't expect you to. But I need you to know something." He took a breath. "These past weeks, watching you with Emmerich and Cosima, seeing the life you built from nothing. You're the strongest person I've ever known, Seren. What you did, raising them alone, protecting them, it's extraordinary." The words broke something open in her chest. "I was so angry," she whispered. "For so long, anger was all I had. You had every right. But now..." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the man she had fallen in love with years ago. Changed, yes. Haunted. But still him. "Now I don't know what I feel." Soren stepped closer, slowly, giving her time to retreat. She didn't. "Then let me show you," he breathed. "Let me remind you what we were. What we could still be." His mouth found hers. The kiss was everything she remembered and nothing she expected. Gentle at first, questioning. Then deeper, hungrier. 5 years of longing pouring out. Her hands fisted in his shirt, his arms wrapped around her waist. And the bond between them exploded into life, a golden thread winding through her soul. They broke apart, gasping. "Seren?" Her name was a prayer on his lips. "My mate." "Soren, She stopped, confusion flickering. Something's wrong. His skin was growing cold, his face turning pale, his eyes clouding with pain. "Soren? What's happening?" He tried to speak. No words came. His hand flew to his chest. A sound escaped him, half gasp, half groan, and his legs buckled. Seren caught him as he fell. "Soren, look at me." His eyes found hers, glazed with agony. "The curse," he managed. "It's awakening." "What curse?" But he couldn't answer. His body convulsed, and Seren screamed for help as the man she had just kissed began to die in her arms. The royal healer worked through the night. Seren sat in the corridor, hands trembling. Cosima had found her at dawn, drawn by some instinct, and now pressed against her side. "He's not going to die," Cosima said quietly. "I can feel it. His thread is still bright." "His thread?" "The golden thread. I see them, connecting people." Cosima's silver eyes were distant. "His goes to you. It's very strong, but something dark is wrapped around it." Squeezing. Shadowborn magic. Her daughter had inherited the sight. The chamber doors opened. The healer emerged, exhaustion carved into her face. "He's stable. But I've never seen anything like this curse. It's ancient, woven into his bloodline." "What kind of curse?" "A soul fracture curse. Every time he tries to complete a true mate bond, it activates. Fragments his mind, his memories. If it progresses fully, it will shatter him." Seren's blood turned to ice. "That's why he doesn't remember the wedding." "Exactly. The curse created gaps. Moments where he could be controlled, made to do things he would never choose. Someone used that window to change his choice at the altar. Yes, someone who understood the curse intimately. The healer paused. There's something else. The curse is connected to another bloodline. Shadowborn magic could either destroy him or save him. Seren's heart stopped. You carry the shadow blood, the healer continued. I felt it when you arrived. You could reach into his fractured soul and make it whole. And if I fail? Then you will both shatter. Seren entered Soren's chambers alone. He lay motionless, pale as death, his breathing shallow. His skin was ice cold. He has perhaps 3 days, the healer had said. Find a way to break it, or lose him. Seren sank into the chair beside his bed, mind reeling. All these years she had blamed him, believed he had chosen cruelty, but he had been a victim too. Trapped by a curse, manipulated by someone who had stolen his free will. Who did this to you? She whispered. Who hated you enough to curse your entire bloodline? A new question burned even brighter. Who had exploited the curse 5 years ago? Who had orchestrated Celine's placement at his side? Seren pressed a kiss to his cold forehead. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to save you. It was time to find answers. Seren found her sister in the Queen's chambers. Celine sat before a mirror, but her reflection showed none of the vanity Seren expected. She looked tired, hollow, like a woman slowly emptied over 5 years. You came. Celine's voice was flat. I wondered how long it would take. The king is dying, a curse that someone exploited. To put you on the throne instead of me. Yes, I know. You've known all this time? I've suspected. Celine set down her brush. But I've been, not myself, not for a long time. Seren studied her sister. The woman before her was thin, fragile, with shadows under her eyes. What happened to you? I became queen. Celine laughed bitterly. Everything Mother wanted. And it's been a prison ever since. Mother? Seren's blood ran cold. Our stepmother? Of course. Did you think she'd let her stepdaughter become queen when her own daughter could take that place? Celine's eyes filled with despair. She spent years learning about the curse, how to exploit it. The truth crashed over Seren. Vesna, her stepmother. The woman who had looked at Seren with barely concealed hatred for as long as she could remember. She controlled Soren at the wedding. Seren said slowly. Yes. And then she bound me to him, knowing he would never love me. Tears streamed down Celine's face. I tried to tell someone, but Mother has her claws everywhere. The council, the guards. She's been the true power behind the throne. Where is she now? The Eastern Tower. She's a blood witch, Seren. Dark and ancient magic. That's how she knew about the curse. Will you help me stop her? Celine stared. You would trust me? You were a victim too. Seren took her sister's trembling hands. Vesna used us against each other, made us enemies when we should have been allies. Slowly, Celine nodded. I'll help you. But you should know. Mother is powerful, and she wants your children. The twins? She's known since you arrived. Royal blood with shadowborn magic. In her hands, with her blood spells. Celine's grip tightened. They're not just heirs, they are weapons. Fire erupted in Seren's veins. Stay with Emmerich and Cosima. Don't let anyone near them. Where are you going? The shadows rose around her like living darkness. The power she had suppressed for so long roared to life. I'm going to end this. The Eastern Tower rose against the night sky. Seren climbed with shadows coiling at her heels. The door stood open. An invitation. A trap. She walked through anyway. Vesna stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by candles burning with sickly green flame. She looked exactly as Seren remembered, beautiful in a cold way, with raven black hair and eyes like chips of ice. Stepdaughter. Vesna's smile was razor-sharp. I wondered when you'd figure it out. It's over. Whatever you're planning ends now. Does it? Vesna laughed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I've spent 30 years building this. Building what? The curse was never meant to destroy the Drake Veils. It was meant to prepare them. Hollow out their souls so something else could fill the void. Vesna's eyes gleamed. Not just him. His children. Your children. Royal blood and shadow magic combined. Seren's shadows exploded outward. But Vesna raised her hand and green fire erupted to meet the darkness. The collision shook the tower. And somewhere below, Seren heard her children screaming. The sound of her children's terror cut through everything. Seren's concentration shattered. Vesna's fire slammed into her, throwing her against the wall. Mama! Cozima's voice echoed. Help! Your children are being collected as we speak, Vesna said calmly. Once I complete the ritual, even your shadow magic won't be enough. Rage unlike anything Seren had ever felt surged through her. She had spent 5 years protecting those children. She would not lose them now. The shadows responded to her fury, rising like a storm. But this time, she didn't try to control them. She let go. The darkness exploded outward. The shadows weren't just power. They were her. An extension of her will, her love, her desperate need to protect. Vesna's eyes widened. Impossible. No one has manifested the full shadow gift in generations. You should have left my children alone. Seren's voice echoed with 1,000 shadows. She raised her hand, and darkness obeyed. Vesna threw fire. The shadows swallowed it. She conjured barriers. Darkness shattered them. She tried to flee. Shadow tendrils wrapped around her ankles. I've mastered arts you can't comprehend. You studied power. Seren stepped closer. But you never understood love. She reached out, and shadows plunged into Vesna's chest. Not to kill. She found the blood magic Vesna had woven over decades, the tapestry of curses and bindings, and unraveled it. Vesna screamed as her magic was torn away, leaving nothing but an ordinary woman with extraordinary cruelty. The witch collapsed, unconscious and powerless. Seren ran down the stairs and found her children in the courtyard, surrounded by Vesna's servants. But they weren't cowering. Emmerich had a stolen sword, holding it with pure instinct, and Cosima was glowing, silver light pouring from her body, creating a barrier no one could breach. Mama, I can't hold it much longer. You don't have to. Seren's shadows swept through the courtyard, binding the servants in darkness. She pulled her children into her arms. It's okay, I've got you. Mama. Emmerich's voice was muffled. You were amazing. You were both amazing. Celine appeared with loyal guards. Take Vesna to the dungeons. She'll face trial. Then Seren remembered. Soren. The curse was tied to Vesna's magic. Now that the witch was powerless, the binding should be weakened. She ran to the king's chambers, her children's hands gripping hers. Soren lay pale and still. But as Seren reached for his hand, she felt something. A flicker. A warmth. The curse is breaking, but it needs Shadowborn magic to reach into his soul and make it whole. She climbed onto the bed, cradling his face. Emmerich, Cosima, hold my hands. Whatever happens, don't let go. Small fingers interlaced with hers. Seren closed her eyes and let the shadows in. She dove into his mind, into the shattered landscape of his soul. She found fragments scattered like broken glass, memory and identity torn apart. 5 years of confusion, a lifetime of suppressed love, and she gathered them all. Piece by piece, she wove him back together. Exhausting work requiring every ounce of power. But she had her children's love flowing through her, and Soren's soul reaching for hers. 2 broken people finding each other in the darkness. When Seren opened her eyes, amber ones looked back. Seren. His voice was hoarse but clear. You saved me. We saved each other. His gaze moved to the children. Wonder filled his face. Are those your children? Our children. Soren sat up slowly, staring at the twins. Hello, he said softly. I'm your father. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. Emmerich stepped forward, jaw set with stubborn determination. Mama said you were under a bad spell, that you didn't mean to hurt her. Is that true? Yes, I would never have chosen to leave her. Emmerich considered this, then nodded. Okay, I believe you. He paused. Can you still teach me to fight? Soren laughed, tears streaming down his face. Yes, anything you want. Cosima approached slowly, placing her small hand over his heart. Your thread is whole now. It's connected to Mama. And to us. She looked up at him. You feel like home. Soren pulled both children into his arms. Seren watched her family embrace, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt complete. 6 months later, spring had come to Valdoria. Seren stood on the balcony of the Queen's chambers, her chambers now, watching the children play below. Emmerich practiced sword forms while Cosima read to her adopted kittens. Vesna's trial had concluded months ago. She would spend the rest of her days in the deepest dungeon, stripped of everything. Celine had testified against her own mother and had since left Valdoria to find her own path. The marriage between Soren and Celine had been annulled, declared void due to magical coercion. When Soren announced his intention to marry the mother of his children, the kingdom celebrated. Arms wrapped around her waist. They're happy, Soren murmured. They are. She turned to face him. Are you? I have you. I have our children. I have my mind back, my soul back. He cupped her face. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He kissed her, and she felt the mate bond pulse between them, complete and unbreakable. I have something to tell you, she said when they parted. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. His eyes widened. Another one? Perhaps 2. Twins seem to run in our family. Soren dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to her stomach, shoulders shaking. I don't deserve this. You deserve everything. We fought for it. He looked up, tears streaming freely, and smiled. I love you. I loved you before I knew what love was. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I love you too. Always. Below, Emmerich's wooden sword clattered to the ground. Mama! Papa! Cosima says there's going to be babies. Seren and Soren looked at each other and laughed. Yes, Soren called. It's true. Emmerich whooped with joy. Cosima smiled that knowing smile. And high above them, on the balcony where 2 broken people had finally become whole, the Alpha King and his Shadowborn Queen held each other and watched their family grow. This wasn't an ending at all. It was everything they had ever been waiting for. The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, it became the moment Seren Vantrell's entire world shattered. She stood at the altar of the Grand Cathedral of Valdoria, dressed in silk and silver, waiting for the man she loved to speak her name. But when the priest asked him to confirm his bride, Soren's eyes passed over Seren as if she were a stranger, and he spoke her sister's name instead. Celine. 1 word. 1 name, and her life ended in front of 1,000 witnesses. But what no one knew, what Seren herself didn't discover until weeks later, was that she carried his heirs, twin heartbeats growing inside her. She thought she had lost everything. She was wrong, because some bonds cannot be broken, some loves cannot be forgotten, and some stories are only just beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I always read them, and they mean more than you know.